Is it possible to make an audiobook for free? Hi, I'm Rebecca H. Lee. I am an audiobook narrator, producer, and director. First of all, let's zero in on why. Perhaps you're an author who has the audio rights to your book and you don't have a lot of funds to turn it into an audiobook. Now, if you're a consumer of books and audiobooks and you want to learn how to have a robot read you your book for free, that's not what this video is about, but you should know that you can just have your tablet or your phone do that if you look under accessibility. Maybe you're an author thinking of selling a robot voiced version of your book. Well, you should know that that option is already available to readers. They can, like I said, use the accessibility function on their phone or tablet, so they're probably not going to purchase it from you. So first of all, can you make an audiobook for free? Well, there's no such thing as a free lunch, as they say, but there are a few options for those who don't have the immediate funds to create an audiobook and want to go about it a different way. As an indie author, I bet you have a DIY mentality, so you might be thinking, I have a good voice, I can read, I can just do the audiobook myself. So I'm not going to get into the acting required, but let's just assume that you also are an actor, and so you already have these skills. Recording your audiobook may be an option, especially if you are writing nonfiction, and if you're a podcaster and people already know your voice, and you already have all of the equipment needed to record an audiobook. But you should know that it's not free, and in fact, startup costs can be pretty high. If that scares you, then you can go ahead and fast forward to, I'll put the timestamp right here and in the description. So you're going to need a decent microphone. That can be about $225. You also need a quiet space to record in. Now this is a, prefab booth that I paid about $10,000 for with shipping and everything. You're not going to necessarily need that, but you will need some quiet space. Now if you live alone, that might be easy if you don't have noisy neighbors and leaf blowers all day. But if you do have roommates or pets or kids, you might be recording in the middle of the night. Finding the times that you actually can record, and it does take quite a few hours, so keep that in mind. If you have a walk-in closet, that's a great option to create a booth because you already have all the clothing in there, which is going to absorb some of the reflections. Reflections are like echoes. You don't want to sound like you're singing in the shower when you're recording an audiobook. You're not going for the beautiful reverberation. You're going for clarity, and you want people to be able to hear every single word that you say. So you want what's called a dead space. With a walk-in closet and a lot of blankets and clothing, you might not have to spend any extra money on that, but if you don't have a walk-in closet, you can purchase some moving blankets and maybe some PVC pipes and build your own kind of DIY booth for probably under $100. Along with the microphone, you'll also need an interface that's around $150 or so. And then don't forget about all of the accessories for holding your tablet, assuming you have a tablet, or your phone if that's all you have, and a boom arm for your microphone, and what's called a shock mount, which most microphones don't come with. So that's going to be another $75 or so. Once you get your book recorded, you will need to get the post-production done on it. That's usually runs about $125 to $175 per finished hour. Per finished hour means if your audiobook ends up being 10 hours long, one finished hour is, well, it's 1 hour. So 10 finished hours would be a 10-hour audiobook. So if you spend $125 on editing and post-production, your per finished hour for a 10-hour audiobook is going to be, what did I say, $125 times 10, 1,250. Math is not my strong point. We're not going to go into the time required to actually record the thing. That's a whole nother can of worms. We'll just assume that you have all the time in the world. Maybe you're retired and this is something you can just do on your leisure time. So at the end of the project, when you add up all the expenses, a 10-hour audiobook might run you minimum $1,450. And that's if you're really bootstrapping, getting the the DIY booth and saving as much money as you can. Price is probably going to go up from there. So that's not free, not really close to free. It might be worth it if you're doing multiple books. If you're a nonfiction author, you do podcasting already, you already have the equipment, definitely look into that. For everyone else, I would suggest looking at one of these next options that I'm going to talk about. Like a lot of you listening to this, I first heard about royalty share when I signed up with ACX. ACX is the Audiobook Creation Exchange. They are owned by Audible, which is owned by Amazon, and this is a really popular way for a lot of authors to get their books on audio, in audio, on or in. ACX is basically a matchmaking service where it pairs up indie authors and narrator producers. And I say narrator producers because they're not just narrating the book. They are actually getting the post-production done. They are delivering retail-ready files. So all you have to deliver is the manuscript and the cover art. The other part of ACX is it is a distributor, but it only distributes to Amazon and iTunes. ACX is usually the first stop for a lot of indie authors who want to get their first audiobook done. It's also used by self-motivated voice actors who want to do audiobooks. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to use the term rights holder to refer to indie authors who use ACX, and narrator to refer to narrator producers. The ACX platform is pretty easy to use from the author's side, and it has a lot of flexibility. This is because once the narrator is cast, they are responsible for doing all the post-production and for uploading all the files straight into the platform. One thing to note is that although the platform is used for casting as well as distribution, you don't have to use it for both, although many do. But if you just want to go to ACX to cast your narrator, or you want to go there just to distribute your files once you already have them, you can do that as well. If you wrote a book and you want to distribute it through ACX, you need to go in and say what kind of contract you want to do. So the options are per finished hour, or PFH, royalty share, and royalty share plus. Per finished hour, we're not going to talk about. That means you pay for the audiobook narration and production outright, and that's not what you're here for. You want to learn how you can do it more affordably. So we'll talk about royalty share. Royalty share means you don't pay anything until you get paid. And basically, ACX does all that for you. It pays you and it pays your narrator. So Royalty Share Plus is a hybrid of the two. We're not going to talk about that, but you should know that Royalty Share Plus does follow all the same rules as Royalty Share. So the restrictions that are put on Royalty Share are also put on Royalty Share Plus. So as you may have concluded, Royalty Share isn't really free since you are actually splitting the profits with the narrator. But if you're just dipping your toes in the water and you have no idea how well or unwell your audiobook is going to do, it might be a great first step. It might be worth trying out. So here are the requirements for royalty share projects. First of all, to use ACX at all, you need to be a resident of United States, Canada, UK, Ireland. I think that's it. Let's look. ACX is currently open to residents of the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and Ireland who have a mailing address, valid local taxpayer identification number, TIN, and banking details for one of these countries. So that's straight from the ACX website. You must have selected exclusive distribution. That means that you only can post your audiobook here on this platform. You cannot post it anywhere else, including YouTube. You cannot sell it from your own website. All of the proceeds, anything that comes in from people purchasing your audiobook must come through Amazon, Audible, or iTunes. And that's because you're sharing your profits with your narrator. So they need to get paid. They need to have the record of how many purchases are coming in. You can only split payment with one other person. So usually that's the narrator. If you have a project that is like a dual narration or a duet narration, that can be more complicated. It's probably not worth doing unless you happen to be lucky and you find this narrator who maybe they're married to their partner and so they're It's all going to one account. Or maybe they are a producer, but they actually have some other people that they work with and they're used to just paying them. They might pay them a flat fee and split the royalties, between you and them. If you have a series and you plan to eventually bundle the series, you must use the same narrator for every book. So one other thing is royalty share, ACX's program, is not the only royalty split program available for United States, Canadian, Ireland, and UK residents, but it is the most common one. It is the one that doesn't require, connections with people in certain publishing, areas to get in with. So it is by far the easiest. One more thing I'm going to mention. I did say that Royalty Share and Royalty Share Plus have the same rules. There is one exception to that. Royalty Share does not have a contract for union narrators, whereas Royalty Share Plus does. So if you want to work with union narrators, you'll probably, want to do a per finished hour or a Royalty Share Plus with them. Royalty Share Plus, just so you know, it has to be $100 or more per finished hour plus the royalties. Per finished hour through ACX has its own rules for that. Okay, so that's ACX royalty share. The next option is licensing your audio rights to a publisher. There are a few large audiobook publishers and a few small ones that will assume some risk and license your audiobook if they think that it's going to do well. The big ones right now in 2026 are Tantor, Podium Entertainment, and there's a new imprint of Simon & Schuster called Simon Maverick, and they work with indie authors that want to license their audio rights. These publishers actually have people who will scout audiobooks or scout books that they think will do well in audio. And so it's a good idea for you to have a website and have your contact information on that website so that they can find you. If you do end up working with them, they take care of everything from the casting to the production of the whole thing and sometimes even some of the marketing. Now, if you're thinking, but I want to do the casting, I want to have a say in who the narrator is, let them know that. That's something that can be negotiated. Contracts can vary, and they're also not publicly available, so I can't talk about how much you're going to make, what percentage, and it's art anyway, it's going to be unpredictable. But this is probably a great option for you if you have a kind of a higher budget book where it's not solo narration. Maybe you have 2 or 3 narrators that are going to need to split payment, and the publishing house can take care of all of that for you. They're not going to accept every book, of course. They're only going to accept the ones that they think are going to make a profit or think have a chance of making a profit, but it might be a great option. Also, many of the publishers will publish your audiobook wide, which means not just Audible or iTunes, but all of the different libraries and retailers that do audiobooks. Okay, what if you want to stick with your rights? You want to keep them, you want all the proceeds, the profits, and you want all the control. The last option I'm going to talk about is crowdfunding. Yes, you can crowdfund an audiobook. Is every audiobook crowdfunding campaign going to be successful? No. But there are things that you can do to have a better shot at making it successful, and there have been plenty of success stories. It does take a lot of work. It might be time that you would rather use for writing your next book. But as an indie author, you did sign up for the extras. That's what being an indie author is. If you want to crowdfund your audiobook, think of it as a fancy pre-order. Have everything in place so that you can show that to your potential crowdfunders. So you have your cover art, you have your narrators contracted and ready to go. Maybe you even have a short clip from the audiobook. Research the rules for the crowdfunding service that you use. Some of them don't include what they consider to be erotic content, so that might be your steamy romance books or your romantasy books. Also, if you don't reach your crowdfunding goal, you won't receive a dime. So don't put your goal too high. Be a bit conservative, especially if it's your first crowdfunding campaign and you're still testing the waters. To learn more about audiobook production, check out bexvoice.com/production, And you can also sign up there to receive my audiobook tip of the week for authors. If you want to learn how to get your audiobook to as many listeners as possible, or to sell it on as many platforms, get it to as many libraries as you can, check out bexvoice.com/wide audiobooks. And like and subscribe or whatever.